Arrows and bullets all spent. So sad we fall. That is what the general wrote. That is not what Japan was told. Before the poem reached the press, 2 characters were crossed out. 2 different ones were written in their place. The word sad became mortified. A censor's pen, a moment's work, and a dying commander's grief was converted into something the government could use. Something that pointed forward instead of inward, something that called for anger rather than mourning. One word. But understanding why that word had to be changed is understanding everything about why Japan fought the Battle of Iwo Jima, and everything about the men who sent 21,000 soldiers to die on 8 square miles of volcanic rock they already knew they could not hold. The general's name was Tadamichi Kuribayashi. By the time he wrote those words, he had been underground for weeks, out of food and water, his garrison reduced from 21,000 men to a few hundred survivors fighting with rifle butts in the dark. He understood exactly what had happened. He had understood it, in fact, long before the first American ship appeared on the horizon. His government could not afford for the Japanese people to know what he knew. So when his poem arrived, they changed it. That single editorial act, a pen crossing out one word and writing another, is the most precise window into what Imperial Japan's leadership was actually doing in the final year of the Pacific War. This is the story of that word, and of the man who wrote it. In the summer of 1944, the Imperial General Headquarters, IGHQ, reaches a conclusion it can never make public. Japan cannot win this war. Not tactically, or not strategically, not by any sequence of events the most senior officers on the general staff can construct. The Mariana Islands fall in July. With them goes Japan's outer defensive screen and any serious prospect of preventing American bombers from reaching the home islands. The combined fleet, already hollowed by 2 years of attrition, loses what remains of its striking power in the Philippine Sea. Aircraft losses in 1944 are so severe that even if production is not disrupted by bombing, and it is being disrupted, combined Japanese air strength cannot be rebuilt to meaningful numbers until spring 1945 at the earliest. IGHQ knows this. Privately, in the war rooms where rank and realism can coexist, the senior staff has worked through the arithmetic. The conclusion is inescapable. But it cannot be said. Japan is a country whose leadership has spent a decade telling its people that the national character, the spirit of Yamato, transcends the material calculus that governs lesser nations. You do not tell people who believe this that you have lost. The social contract between the military and the public, between the emperor and the nation, has been built on a foundation of ultimate victory. There is no vocabulary in the official language for what comes next. So IGHQ arrives at an answer that allows the war to continue without admitting the war is lost. The answer is attrition, not victory. Attrition. Make the price of every island so catastrophic that public opinion in the United States cracks and the enemy negotiates rather than demands unconditional surrender. That is now the strategic objective. Not to win, or to bleed the enemy until he agrees to stop. The doctrine they issue in August 1944 is called Fukaku, defense in depth underground, from fortified positions that cannot be taken without enormous cost. Every island between the Marianas and the Japanese mainland is to be converted into a killing ground, and the men ordered to hold those killing grounds are to hold them until they are dead. Iwo Jima sits inside this logic exactly. A piece of Tokyo Prefecture, Japanese home territory, politically and symbolically. Midway between the Marianas and the capital, close enough to Japan that American fighters could escort their bombers all the way to the city. IGHQ understands what losing it means. Every planner in Tokyo understands, and yet IGHQ also knows, plainly, that the island cannot be saved. There is no naval force to interdict an American landing. There is no air cover that can be sustained at that range for any meaningful length of time. Whatever force Japan places on Iwo Jima will be there alone. They send men anyway, because the doctrine requires it, because the island must bleed. The question of who to send is answered in late May 1944. His name appears regularly in the files of the Imperial General Staff, rarely favorably. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, Nagano-born, samurai lineage 6 generations deep, graduate of the Imperial Army Academy, decorated officer of 2 prior conflicts. None of that is the problem. The problem is what he has been saying. Between 1928 and 1930, Kuribayashi serves as a deputy military attaché in Washington. He travels widely across the country and through American cities and farmland and industrial centers. He watches the assembly lines. He calculates the tonnage. He writes home to his wife Yoshi with the precise attention of a man who cannot stop counting. Factories producing more steel in a single month than Japan outputs in a quarter, a country whose capacity for industrial mobilization is, in his own words, beyond imagination. He draws a conclusion he will spend the next decade repeating to anyone willing to listen, and many who are not. The United States is the last country in the world Japan should fight. By 1943, the word most often attached to his name in certain circles is defeatist. He is not wrong. IGHQ knows he is not wrong. But being right and being useful are different things in a wartime bureaucracy whose entire architecture depends on not acknowledging certain truths out loud. He is not alone in this position. Colonel Baron Takeichi Nishi had won a gold medal in show jumping at the 1932 Los Angeles Olympic Games. He spent time in California, befriending Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks. He speaks English fluently and understands the country with the intimacy of someone who has been welcomed there. On Iwo Jima, American Marines who learn his identity try to reach him through loudspeakers, calling to him by name in his language, offering terms. He does not answer. He dies on the island. The 2 Japanese officers who best understood their enemy are placed in direct opposition to that enemy, with no possibility of retreat and no promise of relief. The war has uses for their knowledge that do not include survival. On June 8, 1944, Kuribayashi receives orders bearing the signature of Prime Minister Hideki Tojo. He is to take command of the defense of Iwo Jima. His wife, Yoshi, describes what he says when the papers arrive. It is unlikely, he tells her, that even his ashes will return. The historian Kumiko Kakehashi has suggested with care that Kuribayashi may have been selected precisely because this assignment is known to be a death sentence. One final use for a defeatist that would also serve as a silencing. Before he departs, he is granted an audience with Emperor Hirohito. He writes to Yoshi afterward. The letter does not mention the emperor. It does not discuss strategy or duty or the honor of the assignment, whilst it expresses regret for a draft in the kitchen of their home in Nagano that he failed to repair before leaving. He asks their son Taro to fix it while he is away. He sails for Iwo Jima in July. His defensive design for the island is rooted in the same understanding that made him unpopular in Tokyo. He knows how Americans respond to casualties. He has sat at their tables, driven their roads, watched the scale of what they can build and absorb. He knows that American public opinion is shaped by cost. That if the price of victory rises high enough, the will to continue erodes. His defense is built around that single calculation. No banzai charges. They are gestures, not tactics, and they produce American advantage at Japanese expense. The island is to be held from underground, from positions that cannot be located or reduced, by men fighting not to win, but to exact a price so catastrophic that the Americans reconsider what winning is worth. He issues his courageous battle vows. Kill 10 Americans before you fall. Your battle position is your grave. Wait, make them come to you. Fight until there is nothing left to fight with. He does not promise his men this will save them. He is not that kind of commander. Iwo Jima is an ugly piece of ground, 8 square miles of black volcanic ash, loose and soft, that swallows boots and bogs vehicles. The air smells of sulfur. Steam vents from fissures in the earth. The ground itself is warm to the touch. Geothermal activity close beneath the surface, the island still in the business of becoming something. There are no trees by February 1945. The pre-invasion bombardment has stripped the surface bare, and what is left is a gray-black moonscape of craters and smoking hillocks with the cone of Mount Kuribayashi rising 554 feet at the southern tip. Beneath the surface, something else entirely. By the time the American fleet assembles offshore, 18 kilometers of tunnel have been dug, out of a planned 27. Command centers 75 feet underground. Barracks connected by passages allowing men to move between positions without emerging. Hundreds of artillery and mortar placements sited with interlocking fields of fire, positioned so that destroying one does not degrade the next. The volcanic ash packs into superior concrete. The tunnels have multiple exits. They are hot from the geothermal activity below, poorly ventilated, dark. They are also invisible from the air and impervious to bombardment. Ammunition has been rationed to 60% of what a single division engagement normally requires. Food enough for 4 months. IGHQ knows the supply situation. Kuribayashi knows it. Every officer on the island knows it. They are not provisioned for a campaign. They are provisioned for an endurance. The American invasion force assembling offshore is the most powerful amphibious fleet the Pacific War has produced. 800 ships, 110,000 men, overwhelming air and naval gunfire support. The Marines are told the island will be secured in perhaps 5 days. American intelligence is confident that the pre-invasion bombardment has done its work. In his command post below ground, Kuribayashi waits. His orders are clear. Let the beaches fill before opening fire. It is February 19th, 1945. The skies clear. At 8:59 in the morning, the first wave hits the beach. The beach is quiet. The Marines move inland. The ground is difficult. Boot soles dig in and find no purchase. Vehicles bog to their axles in the loose ash. But there is no fire. Wave after wave of landing craft deposits men and machines on the narrow beachhead. The entire amphibious plan is working. The beach is full. Kuribayashi opens fire. From positions the Marines cannot locate, pre-registered mortar coordinates, artillery in the northern ridge lines, machine guns embedded in the tunnel network with no visible aperture. Simultaneous fire hits every quadrant of the beachhead. Men caught in the open have no angle on the sources. Casualties in those first hours are severe enough to shock the officers aboard the command ship USS El Dorados as the reports come in. The Japanese do not banzai charge. They do not expose themselves. They fight from exactly the positions Kuribayashi built, and when American fire finds one position, the defenders move underground to another. That night, Marine General Holland Smith studies the casualty reports aboard his flagship. He is among the most experienced amphibious commanders the American military has produced. He has never seen a Japanese defense that looks like this. No exposed flanks, no human wave attacks, no dramatic gesture that can be answered with firepower. Just disciplined, grinding, invisible resistance. He tells the war correspondents on his ship, "I don't know who he is, but the Japanese general running this show is one smart bastard." Kuribayashi has been in America. He has driven its roads, calculated its production, written to his wife about its national character. He has shaped every defensive position on this island around 16 years of accumulated understanding of the people he's fighting. Holland Smith doesn't know his name. On day 5, Mount Kuribayashi falls. The flag goes up over its summit, and the image travels around the world. From inside the Japanese lines, it is not merely a tactical loss. It is the symbolic heart of the southern defense. Gone. 1/3 of the island is now under American control. The grinding continues northward. The weeks that follow acquire their own geography. The Marines name one sector the Meat Grinder, a complex of mutually supporting positions in the rocky central highlands where every approach is covered from multiple angles. The 4th Marine Division fights there for 7 days. When they are relieved, it is still not taken. The Japanese tunnels mean that positions taken by day are re-garrisoned by night. Terrain changes hands and changes back. By mid-March, Kuribayashi's communication network is degrading as relay stations are overrun and officers are lost. His tanks are gone. 2/3 of his officers are dead. Survivors in the tunnels describe men stripped to 30 kilograms, who look, in the words of one witness, like they came from Mars. They keep fighting. Between March 16th and 26th, Kuribayashi sends his last radio messages to the mainland. On the 16th, he transmits to Imperial headquarters. The battle is entering its final chapter. Since the enemy's landing, the gallant fighting of the men under my command has been such that even the gods would weep. In particular, I humbly rejoice in the fact that they have continued to fight bravely, though utterly empty-handed and ill-equipped, against a land, sea, and air attack of a material superiority such as surpasses the imagination. Attached to this farewell in the traditional waka form are 3 death poems. In one of them, Kuribayashi writes, "Arrows and bullets all spent, so sad we fall." He continues transmitting. 5 days after the farewell message, "We have not eaten or drunk for 5 days, but our fighting spirit remains high." He radios Major Hori at the garrison on Chichi-jima to the north. "I have 400 men under my command. The enemy is besieging us, firing from tanks, trying to approach the entrance of our cave with explosives. My men and officers are still fighting. The enemy's front lines are 300 meters from us, and they advised us to surrender by loudspeaker." A pause in the transmission. Then, "We only laughed at this childish trick." Between these transmissions, another voice persists, quieter, written months earlier. In September 1944, Kuribayashi had written to his wife Yoshi, "It must be destiny that we as a family must face this. Please accept this and stand tall with the children at your side. I will be with you always." The man sending these final messages from underground, without food, without water, surrounded, is the same man who told his wife that America was the last country Japan should have fought. He is defending Iwo Jima with the same clear eyes that told him, years ago, it could not be defended. On the evening of March 23rd, Kuribayashi sends a final transmission to Major Hori at Chichi-jima. "All officers and men of Chichi-jima, goodbye from Iwo." Hori calls back. He tries for 3 days. He receives no answer. While Kuribayashi and his survivors are still fighting in the tunnels, IGHQ issues field promotions. Kuribayashi becomes a full general. Rear Admiral Toshinosuke Ichimaru is elevated to Vice Admiral. Colonel Masuo Ikeda, who commanded the 145th Infantry Regiment and died in the final days of the battle, is promoted to Major General. The announcements carry the appropriate weight of institutional ceremony. The promotions are real. The relief was never coming. IGHQ gives what it can still give: rank, recognition, the formal language of honorable death, because it cannot give what the men on the island actually needed, which was ammunition, food, and air cover. And then Prime Minister Kuniaki Koiso speaks on Radio Tokyo. What he says is unprecedented. In 3 years of Pacific War, Japan's government has managed every defeat as a strategic withdrawal, every catastrophe as a temporary setback, every fallen island as a sacrifice toward final victory. The public has been fed a version of events carefully shaped to sustain the war's legitimacy, But Iwo Jima is a piece of Tokyo Prefecture. It has been Japanese soil for centuries. Its loss is too large a fact to process through the usual editorial machinery. Koiso announces it plainly: Iwo Jima has fallen. Kuribayashi and several hundred survivors fight for 9 more days after that announcement. The Prime Minister has already told the nation the island's story is finished. The men inside it are still writing it. The 3 death poems Kuribayashi attached to his farewell transmission were, in the assessment of historian Kumiko Kakehashi, a subtle protest against the military command that so casually sent men out to die. The line the world remembers, in translation, "Arrows and bullets all spent, so sad we fall." Before this reaches the Japanese press, imperial censors cross out 2 characters. They write 2 different ones. The word "sad" becomes "mortified." A general who is sad has been defeated. A general who is mortified, who dies in shame at his failure, was denied the chance to fight on. Sadness belongs to the beaten. Mortification belongs to those who are robbed. Sadness invites grief. Mortification invites anger, renewed dedication, continued war. IGHQ needs the second version. They have sent this man to a battle they know cannot be won, with 60% of adequate ammunition, with no naval or air relief on any horizon, and they have issued posthumous promotions while his men are still dying. Now, in the final text his hand produces, they find one word that does not fit the story they are telling. So they change it. He was sad. He said so. They decide the Japanese public cannot be told. On the night of March 25th, Kuribayashi leads several hundred survivors in a final counterattack before dawn. They move against sleeping Marines and Army Air Forces personnel near the airfields. They kill and wound more than 100 Americans before the attack is stopped. Kuribayashi is believed to have died in those final hours. His body is never found. But his son Taro interviewed survivors after the war and learned what his father had arranged. Kuribayashi had asked 2 soldiers to walk with him in those last days. One ahead, one behind, each carrying a shovel. If he was killed, they were to bury him on the spot, so the Americans could not take his body. It appears both soldiers died in the same action. General Holland Smith spent a full day afterwards searching for Kuribayashi's remains to provide an honorable burial. He found nothing. The island was declared secured on the morning of March 26th. Of the 21,000 Japanese soldiers on Iwo Jima, 216 were taken prisoner. Most of the rest died in the tunnels and the rocky ground of the Northern Highlands. But a small number refused to emerge, could not accept Japan's surrender when it came in August, and or could not bring themselves to believe it, or could not stop. 2 soldiers, Yamakage Kufuku and Matsudo Linsoki, remained underground on Iwo Jima until January 6, 1949. Nearly 4 years after the battle ended, an island occupied by American forces and 2 men still in the dark beneath it. IGHQ drew its lessons from Iwo Jima and applied them forward. The underground model: maximum attrition, no strategic retreat, every position a grave, became the template for Okinawa. And behind Okinawa lay the homeland itself, where military planners intended to meet an American invasion with everything that remained. American planners studied the casualty projections, and Iwo Jima had been the bloodiest battle in the history of the United States Marine Corps, the only major Pacific assault where the landing force sustained higher casualties than the garrison they destroyed. Okinawa exceeded it. The projections for the home islands were worse still. Those projections were placed, among other considerations, before President Harry Truman in the summer of 1945. The strategy designed to prevent unconditional surrender had constructed, step by logical step, the conditions that made unconditional surrender inevitable. Kuribayashi had said, before any of this, that Japan should never have fought America. He said it plainly, repeatedly, at professional cost. He was sent to fight anyway. His battle produced the casualties that shaped the decision to end the war the way it ended. And after receiving his assignment, after his wife said his ashes were unlikely to return, after the imperial audience he barely mentioned in his next letter home, Kuribayashi sat down and wrote to his family. The letter does not discuss the emperor. It does not discuss the island or the strategy or the honor of the assignment. It expresses regret for a draft in the kitchen of their home in Nagano that he had failed to fix before leaving. He instructs his son Taro to complete the repair while he is away. He did not return. His remains were never recovered.